Hey everyone, Chloe here. Sevana and I are excited to let you know that we have a new episode for season 2 scheduled to come out on March 15th. So if you haven't already, and depending on which platform you're listening to us on, make sure you follow us, hit the bell, or turn on your notification so you get the newest episode as soon as it's released. Today, we are replaying another one of the most popular episodes from last season, so let's get to it.
Hello, and welcome to The Business Behind Small Business, the show that reminds you that just because you own a business doesn't mean you're a business owner. In each episode, we will discuss a common issue small businesses face and offer tips and advice from the perspectives of two business owners, one that built to sell and one that built to inherit. We are your hosts, Sevana Stone and Chloe Lee. There's a lot of business behind small business, so let's get to it. All right, we are deep diving into what happens to your business when something happens to you. What are the different types of protection you should have for your company to secure what you've worked so hard to build? I do want to point out before we get started that we are going to discuss both the macabre and make points that are also relevant if you choose to step down, retire, or otherwise disengage from your company while still very much alive. I also want to point out that although we will discuss many points and make many suggestions, this podcast should be a part of your discussion, as there may be so much more that we don't uncover here that you should consider as ways to secure the future of your company. Before we begin, we should note our disclaimer. We are not licensed financial experts, nor do we give financial advice. Anything we share with you here on our podcast, whether it be a personal experience or submission or advice, tips that have worked for us or that we believe would work for you, should not be viewed as either financial, business, or tax advice. We ask for you to do your research, have open and honest conversations with your company's own support providers, and make decisions based upon that. Throughout this podcast, we will share our knowledge and give suggestions and hope you will receive them as part of your overall research to better your own company. And I would also like to apologize for any background noise that you hear. My dogs have decided that now is the time that they want to really play. And it's one of the caveats of working from home that now they're very vocal.
That was not our sound effect that we put in.
Yeah. So if you hear jingling or growling or any other kind of noises, just know that it is, yes, my doggies. So in saying that, Chloe, why don't you take it away from here?
Yeah. So let's kind of start with taking a look from the lens of what happens when you step back from the company. So like Sevana was saying, you can certainly step back, be very much alive, still thriving, but you may choose to kind of step back from your company. And when you do, generally that option kind of falls within like two buckets, right? Either you sell the company or you somehow transfer ownership of the company. So let's talk about selling your company. So if you sell your business, usually you do either like an asset sale or an equity sale. So an asset sale means that somebody will come along, they'll purchase all your assets. So that could be your accounts receivable, trademarks, products, inventory, or your equipment or something along those likes. And then after that, you'll wind down your company and then effectively you'll end up shutting it down. An equity sale means that somebody actually comes and takes ownership of your existing business. So they come and they take everything from your balance sheet to your profit and loss. It's just kind of taking over your EIN and everything that you have as it is currently today. So all the assets, the liability, and the equity in your company. Now, the other option is you can transfer ownership. So you can always transfer ownership of your company to a family member or somebody you designate. So maybe somebody you've homegrown over time, an employee that you kind of raised through the ranks and they know the business better than anyone else. And you've been just spending a lot of time mentoring this individual to take over. You can transfer the ownership by allowing them to buy stock in your company. You can set up like a buy-sell agreement, or you can actually do a lease purchasing agreement where you kind of lease your company for a period of time. It's like, kind of a try before you buy approach. It's similar to like leasing a car, essentially. And then after the lease is over, they can decide if they want to go ahead and do full ownership, or maybe they want to lease it longer, or they want to get out of the agreement. So that's also something to consider. So, those are the options you can choose if you decide to step back. And of course, the word choose is kind of the operative word here, right? Sometimes you'll find yourself kind of in involuntary situations where you're at risk at relinquishing parts of your company and you really don't want to. So, that could be, for example, you have a partner who is soon to be your ex-partner, or maybe you or your partner is going through a divorce, and now suddenly the ex-spouse is entitled to 50% of your company. This can definitely happen if there's not the right type of written agreements in place. So let's just say if you're in a partnership with your spouse, oftentimes a lot of married couples are in business together, or you're in partnership with somebody else. One of the key things to remember is you want to make sure that your partnership agreement has really clear language to address what happens should you want to separate or terminate the partnership agreement. Mm-hmm. So this isn't something to take lightly, and it's definitely worth paying an attorney to get it right the first time around. And then also, just as the a part of the person signing off on agreement, you're kind of taking the time to actually read the agreement and fully understand what the terms are. I have to say, sometimes reading these agreements are not easy because, heavens, I know it's English, but I don't know. It's not the English I understand.
Yeah, but the thing about a divorce, if it's your divorce or your partner's divorce, an attorney is involved on their end.
Yes.
Which is why you really should have an attorney involved on your end, because I knew a situation where there was a partnership, a company, multi-million-dollar company partnership, and every now and then one of the partners would ask his wife to maybe print things out or make phone calls, and she wasn't really fully involved, but she had some
involvement,
but very small
line there.
Yeah, and so. And he and the partner had started the business when he and his wife had recently married, and it had grown in the 15 years of their marriage. And then she was like, yeah, well, I was essentially the admin to your business, so I get 30%.
Because she was part of building it up, right?
Yeah. That's how she saw it.
That's how she framed it.
I tell you, custody cases can be very messy, but I haven't seen anything like this. It was so messy. It took 3 years for them to fully divide the company, and it cost so much. It cost that bit. They almost went out of business because it turned into a really, really ugly fight. So what I'm saying is that their divorce becomes your divorce, and their financial issues become your financial issues in a partnership.
That's what happens. Yeah, that's absolutely what happens when you go into business with a partner. Now, I mean, it's probably even messier if your partner happens to be your spouse too. But a lot of times people don't think about kind of like that third degree of separation when your partner's, divorce may affect what you're doing. And then I feel like what happens is when people go into business together, it's kind of like they're too polite sometimes, too polite to kind of bring up this kind of information or talk about it, because you're kind of like starting out a new business. It's so beautiful. It's hopeful. There's so much potential in this relationship. And, talking about death or money, typically it's such an uncomfortable situation and, sometimes even embarrassing that a lot of times people just kind of skim over this fact. I mean, they know it, but then they're just kind of like, well, that's not going to happen to me. There's no way that we're ever going to break up. We're, been best friends since we were when we were babies, right? But, when you go into a business together, it's just not the same thing. Oftentimes, just like in marriage, really, I feel like if you have a business partner, you better be vetting that business partner like you're about to marry that business partner, right? Same thing with just knowing who they are. Yeah, it's an absolute relationship, which means you have risk of the fact that at some point down the road, you guys might break up after a certain time. And if you're not able to face that uncomfortable position and try to make things as clear as possible, you could very well be in a situation where you may be best friends at one point, but then now not so much, and it could get really ugly. And I've actually I had one client company. I was kind of surprised because I remember when I first met them, they were definitely best buddies, super, just almost to the point of you would think they were brothers. They were finish each other's sentences. They just seemed like they were so well in sync. And then 3 years later, I hear from one of them going, yeah, things didn't quite work out. And they just kind of went down this road of separation, and it was not pretty. They're certainly not friends anymore. And the business basically broke them up.
That sucks.
It does, but it's just the reality of people. Just being people, it happens.
Well,
and
yeah,
not being able to stages, and it'll change, and sometimes they'll outgrow one of the partners.
Not being able to separate the business from the personal, that in and of itself is its own podcast. But the inability to separate, well, that's what the core of this is the separation between the business and the personal, the person from the business.
Yeah, absolutely. And so if you find yourself kind of in that situation where maybe you've taken on partners, and again, we're talking about partners who in this case isn't your spouse, you want to make sure that you also address like requirements or limitations as to what your partners can and cannot do with their shares in a company to basically protect yourself and a company as a whole. So in your situation, Sevana, I mean, with the divorce, if they had partners, and they had a good agreement that said, hey, guess what? Like if you can actually do this is say require your partners to either have a prenup agreement or a post-up agreement to basically be clear as to what the rules are and make sure that you kind of limit any ability for that partner to pass along shares without maybe the other partner's approval, right? So that's a pretty common thing, is that you can't transfer ownership of your shares unless the other partners approve, which would by default kind of help stop anything that might happen automatically in a divorce. But, all in all, like, having that agreement is key, and having a good attorney to kind of walk you through and draft that agreement and making sure that's ironclad is really going to kind of help down the road. So the other topic we want to talk about involuntary situations in which you step back from your company is what if you fall ill? We don't ever want to think about that, but what if one day, as a business owner, you're too incapacitated to actually make any decisions in the company for whatever reason, right? Again, it's kind of treading along those lines of uncomfortable conversations that you don't want to think about, even if the conversation is with yourself. But, let's admit it, things can happen. And so if you're prepared ahead of time, oftentimes what's really popular is kind of drawing up a power of attorney agreement. And so a power of attorney agreement is essentially a legal document that kind of allows you to kind of designate an agent to make business decisions on your behalf should you be incapacitated. And it's within the scope of that power of attorney agreement. So a power of attorney agreement can be and should be very specific as to the circumstance and extent of authority that it can grant. And if for some reason, let's say you become incapacitated, you're too ill to make decisions, and you don't have this power of attorney agreement, then, you're going down the road of having legal proceedings and trying to figure out who has basically guardianship over your business matters. And who knows how long that's going to take, know? And if you have a business that is live and it needs immediate action, now you're getting that drawn out, and your business may suffer because nobody's able to actually make a move or actually make a decision on your behalf. So again, that kind of goes back to the whole, make sure you talk to an attorney, get this all drawn up so that you have all the information on hand to make the best decision for what you need to do, and that you're ready in the case that, you may not be ready to step out, but have to.
Yeah. And if you do decide to give power, I would add that if you do decide to give power of attorney to an individual, and that's not a person that is related to you, maybe it's somebody that's within the company, you make sure you ask them if they're okay with being.
Absolutely. Definitely give the other person a heads up.
Well, because not everybody wants to be responsible for that. So somehow they always want to be responsible for it after the fact. But when you go ahead and ask them and you're proactive, they're like, no, I don't want that. So important to ask and make sure that they understand that they are your fail-safe.
Yeah, that's true. And again, I think just kind of like what we were iterating before is just get a good attorney to kind of walk you through it all. Make sure that your agreement's good, and just have your attorney just be there with you and make sure that whatever you end up drafting, everybody, all parties understand what's involved and what's expected. You just don't need that surprise.
Oh God, no. So here's my favorite, and oh my gosh, my dog is like sneezing now.
It's okay. I think he's just excited for the next part.
He is.
Because it really dives into uncomfortable territory, and he's trying to lighten up the mood a little bit.
Well, considering one is like probably 60 pounds heavier than the other, I think this is a good segue, because I'm going to talk about what happens if you die. So I want to talk about ways to secure your company so that your family or key persons in the company are not left with a mess And my little dog ought to take good points here because his life is always in danger from the bigger one. Anyway, so first, you have to consider the way your business is structured before deciding what route to take in protecting your business. So what does that mean? Is your company a sole proprietorship? These generally dissolve when you die. The title of the business is generally held solely in the owner's name, as are the finances, debt, and assets. Like you and the business are one. So if you die, the company tends to die with you. If your business is a partnership, the death of the partner obviously would dissolve that. However, similar to a registered LLC, the company would still survive. A written contract should be agreed upon to decide what the purchase price would be for each partner, allowing the surviving partner to buy that share when that event happens. Corporations exist independent of the owners. The death of one shareholder wouldn't affect the company unless there is a written agreement stating otherwise. His or her shares are passed down as personal property to his or her heirs, and that's usually in their will. And that person who is the heir becomes the shareholder. A lot of times, larger corporations will require a buyout of the shareholder in this event. But regardless, you should make sure that it is stated somewhere if you're not, quite a multi-million or billion-dollar company. But look forward to be. There should be some level of a succession plan, and I was not surprised by this. According to the U.S. Small Business Administration, 70% of business owners lack a succession plan. It's not a comfortable conversation to have, and we've talked about this. But it's a heck of a lot easier than not having one. Think about what you want the future of your business to look like. Do you want it to stay in the family? Do you have someone in mind to run it if you die, such as a key person, like I stated earlier? Do you want the company to remain in the same market, keep the brand? It's a lot to think about, but what happens if the key person is the one to die, not you? So speaking back to your power of attorney, let's say you've given power of attorney to a key person. Let's say that person has a lot of a good chunk of your business, and that person ends up dying or not dying, but becoming incapacitated. There should be some plan C. But so
absolutely,
we keep saying key person, or I keep saying key person. It's also known as key man. There's key man insurance, key person insurance. But let's just dive in a minute into what that means. A key person is just what the name says. It's a person that's key or can be key to the company. Very important. Maybe that person has skills, clients, a network that is the cornerstone of your business. If they die, would it be detrimental to your business?
Ooh, that's a good question to kind of ponder, right?
Yeah.
That's a really good point, because when your company grows to a point where you start having managers and layers, under you, oftentimes there's always a superstar that you rely on. Mm-hmm. And that superstar is essentially, and I've seen this happen in a lot of companies, where the owner essentially give the reins over to the superstar, right? Because they do everything so well. You're like, oh, finally, I got a good hire, and now I can actually relax a little bit and step back and kind of be this business owner kind of role where I'm like a step removed. And, the manager can take care of all the operational details that I don't want to deal with. But then you don't realize like how leveraged your business is to that person. So what if that person, at least if they quit, they'll give you notice, right? But what if they don't have the option and something happens and immediately the next day they're not there anymore? I mean, that's kind of a key person in your business. What do you do then?
Well, you can get key person insurance. It's a type of life or trauma insurance that the business would own and help compensate the losses that happen if something were to happen to that key person. So yeah, it's important to identify who the key person is in your business, and to figure out who that key person is. Consider who works for you and what would happen to your business if that person suddenly became incapacitated. And you know what? I know everyone is an asset, but some are more so than others. And aside from the insurance aspect, it's a good exercise to help you ensure the continuity of your company. So, it's good for you to identify who this person is anyway, because if you haven't made steps towards securing their future, this is your opportunity to do so. You can also identify your key person by calculating the cash flow that this person is responsible for. Imagine starting your business all over again. Who would you hire or rehire? And like, let's say this person, if you were to look at the numbers, because, we're numbers people in the end. When you look at the numbers and you look at how much business does this person generate, maybe before you didn't see them as a key person, but now that you're looking at the dollar signs, you're like, oh my gosh, the person really is like. So even if your company is new or just coming to fruition, consider the key person insurance and consider starting the conversation with the person you have in mind, just like you would if with the power of attorney. You can sweeten the deal by offering them an executive health savings plan. It's a shared ownership critical illness insurance that compensates the company if the employee becomes ill or dies, but it also pays out any accumulated premiums if the employee is healthy and still at the company at a set age. This can also work well in retaining that very important person, especially if you plan on hanging on to your company for many, many years. It's very important to have a business valuation. I know you can't know when you're going to suddenly die. So the business valuation will rely on historical data, taxes, financial records, written processes, etc. Make sure these are airtight. As long as you have these things up to date and clear, the valuation can be done at any time, even after you've died. So to be clear, make sure you're up to date on your taxes. Make sure you're up to date on your financial records. Make sure you have actual written processes, not inside of your head, but on like a PDF.
Yeah, I mean, these things are much more than just operational annoyances, right, that you have to do. There are some real consequences, like what we're talking about right now, that most people don't even think about.
Absolutely, because I'll give an example. I had a client whose husband had just suddenly died. He had a massive heart attack and died. She had no idea what the company was worth. She didn't want to keep the company. She wanted to sell it, but how could she sell it if he didn't keep financial records really? Some things were written here, some things were written there, and all of the processes on how to run this company. It was in the trades industry. So, some things really needed to be written. Nothing was written down.
And you can actually run a pretty large company too. I mean, we can talk about like multi-million-dollar companies and revenues that internally the processes are not written down. It's messy, right? Yeah. I mean, you can do pretty well. I mean, I guess I'm trying to point out here that, we're not thinking about just like a single person company or maybe a person with like a couple employees. These can be sizable companies that doesn't have it together. Yeah. But, still by sheer will has grown to a very respectable size. But the one person or the two people maybe in the company who are the glue holding it together. I mean, if one person is to fall down, like you can see the whole company crumble because there's no processes. There's nothing written up. It's all relying on somebody's knowledge, what's in somebody's head. And then everything's built on a bunch of exceptions. There's Band-Aids to everything everywhere. Yeah. Definitely don't think that you hear about a company who's maybe like 10 million, 20 million, and you think they have it all together. I mean, there are a lot of ways for a company to get that big and still not be organized and ready internally.
Yeah. And in her case, she spent thousands of dollars just to get all of this in order to evaluate the business. It was not
massive payout, especially when you have to do something urgently.
Oh yeah, it was a nightmare. But in any case, many business owners will also opt to a buy-sell agreement. If this is something you want to consider, I highly recommend you discuss this with your financial advisor and or your attorney to help you draft the terms. And I hope that our listeners keep hearing attorney from us.
That will be the word of this podcast.
It is absolutely the word. Anyway, so some businesses will use a life insurance policy to accumulate money and ensure there is capital for the business to continue. This, I think, is a pretty great idea, and one that I hadn't thought of until I did research for our conversation. You can either choose term or permanent. It's up to you to discuss this with your insurance provider to determine what direction you should go in. Speaking of insurance, you should also consider a business continuity plan. This plan will outline the processes and procedures that your business must follow in the event of a death or any major disruption. Generally speaking, your company should have one of these whether or not you pass away, as assurance to your clients on what would happen to them and to your company if a major event were to happen, like a cyber attack, death of a key person, zombie apocalypse, you get the idea. So keep in mind, your business succession plan should coordinate closely with your personal estate plan. You must keep both of them up to date in order to reflect changes in business, in your life, and to the law. This is not a do-it-yourself project. Get professional help.
There is a reason that when we estate planners or estate planning lawyers and financial advisors and business lawyers, they all work so closely together, because when you talk about this kind of topic, you really do need the support of professionals here.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, unless you come from some kind of law degree or background or experience, I mean, honestly, most business owners and entrepreneurs out there would not know even the current laws to be able to even broach the subject. And this is where I guess this is, if you're going to spend money somewhere, this is where you probably do not want to skimp at, right?
Yes.
And I just say that, and I know nobody on the podcast can see me, but I'm like rolling my eyes only because lawyers are so expensive.
Yes. They are.
They are so darn expensive. And all the lawyers out there know it. They're so darn expensive. But honestly, you find a good one who can help you do this. The money is worth it. You may not be able to see it in the short term, but definitely in the long term. It's kind of like insurance, right? You know, when something happens and all of a sudden you're, thanking the stars that you paid all those insurance premiums all throughout the years. It's kind of similar to that, it only takes one thing to basically fold the whole house of cards that you built your business on. And this could be the thing if you decide you just don't want to spend a little money up front to get it done right.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. I mean, I look at it this way. You build a fence around your backyard to keep your dogs from running away because you love them so much, right? You spend money on an alarm system in your home to protect yourself and your family. Those aren't cheap. They're pretty expensive. You spend the money to secure your person, your health insurance, maybe even your life insurance, your family members, and whatever it may be. You spend the money on that. You should be spending it on your business as well. And it's not because it's your business and it's your responsibility, but because of how it affects everyone involved in your business. It's not just about you and your company. It's about the people that work for you. It's about the people who are involved in other services and other manners. It's pretty important because I want to dive into a little bit of what happens if you don't do anything at all, which is apparently 70% of businesses.
I was like, you're in good company, but I mean, whether or not you want to be in part of that percentage, you have to decide for yourself.
Because if you don't do anything at all, as I mentioned, if you're a sole proprietor and this was your bread and butter, it dies off with you. And you gotta ensure that the company, especially if your company is the breadwinner of your major income. If your major income for your family or for yourself comes from your business, you better be securing that, because when it's gone, any income that your family was receiving from it, maybe your partner or whomever it is that was receiving from it, that's going to dry up too.
Yeah, and I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there, is the fact that, oftentimes we don't quite think about the implications to everybody else around us either, right? Like, let's just be honest. If you have a business and it's a small business, right? And again, small business can be multi-million dollars, right? I think sometimes people forget that when they think small business, they think maybe the mom and pop shop or the one or two person firm. But when we talk about small business, we are talking about truly like small business that ranges across the board. It could be up to $50 million, really, or even more than that if we're talking about the SBA calculation of small business. But anyways, the point is that you're so busy surviving, you're so busy building, you're so busy designing what your company is going to look like and how to keep it going and everything. You don't think about the impact that you would have if you suddenly disappeared.
Yeah.
Right. And first of all, nobody wants to think about that. So about yourself disappearing. But it is true, because now you're not answering to just yourself anymore. You have people who rely on you.
And I'd venture to say that the stakes are even higher when you are making anywhere from $200,000 to $500,000 a year, when you are like truly a micro business,
right?
Because the chances are there's less people between you and the income.
Oh yeah, it's probably a huge risk. Most likely, if you step back or you change your position, like the business is done.
Absolutely. So. Right. Yeah.
Good topic, heavy topic.
Heavy. I know. I said it. Hey, I warned everybody. I said it. It's a bit macabre,
but it's such a necessary, thing to think about, right? I think oftentimes, I guess the whole podcast really is on a premise of like starting with the end in mind, essentially.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
We had started with that, and this is part of that conversation too. Yep. Is, hey, there's some ends we like, and then there are some ends we do not like. So let's just be honest and make sure that we're doing everything we can to protect something we're working so hard for.
Yes, absolutely. In each episode, we like to connect a famous example to our discussion to help you relate our talking points on a more global or well-recognized scale. Sometimes we use exact examples of either famous persons or successful business owners of today or in history. And sometimes we use examples of people who inspire us and have inspired today's discussion.
So I'll get started with this one because I have a pretty recent example.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to credit hcamag.com for this example. And this is a pretty good case of a successful transfer of ownership. And that is Jeff Bezos and Amazon. And when he stepped down as CEO, which he's still currently stepping down, but he made the announcement exactly. It's still happening, but he made the announcement in February of 2021. But it was probably as far back as maybe 2014 when he started mentioning the fact that of a succession plan publicly and to all his senior leadership over at Amazon. And then earlier in 2021, he announced that Andy Jassy, the head of, I'm pretty sure I just killed his last name. Sorry. Just realized that. You should know it's a theme for us on this podcast is that we cannot pronounce anybody's last name properly. So Mr. Andy here, he was the head of Amazon Web Services, and he was known as somebody who led Amazon down a successful path almost as long as Bezos has. So clearly somebody who is homegrown internally, knows the business really, really well, and more than likely Jeff Bezos probably has been mentoring him to take over when he's ready to step down. Now, you would think that with a company of that size and the influence, such an announcement would just be such a big deal and a bigger fuss than it really was. But I think that because Jeff Bezos actually did a really good job of actually planning this out, that when he made the announcement, I mean, it almost seems like the company didn't skip a beat and then they just kept going the way they were, right? Mm-hmm. Nobody was fearing the end of Amazon as we know it. And of course, it probably wasn't just the fact that, he had a great legal team, which I'm sure he does, do amazing write-ups and documentation and legal agreements to make sure that things went smoothly on paper and all the mechanics that goes with that. Bezos did a really good job of picking somebody that he's been grooming for some time, and he's been spending a lot of years as well in Amazon building a culture so that the business that he knew will still stand a test of time even after he's no longer directly leading the company. At one point, he even remarked it himself that, he couldn't change the culture even if he wanted to at this point. It's been something that's so ingrained into the company itself that's the, that really is the magic that he created.
Oh, yeah. I completely agree with that. So you are the star student of this podcast, because I honestly couldn't come up with a single example because I've been listening to History Chicks podcast about Sarah Winchester and the Winchester Mystery House. And that's been at the top of my head. So I literally couldn't think of anything but this. However, we learned a lot about her. My takeaway and the reason I can't think of another example is that in 1880, Sarah lost her mother, her father-in-law, and her husband all in 1 year. So why is that significant? Her father-in-law was the owner of the Winchester Repeating Arms Company, a company he bought from Horace Smith and Daniel Wesson after it had gone bankrupt. When Oliver Winchester died, the company was inherited by his son, William, Sarah's husband. William himself died 4 months later. And this left Sarah as 50% owner of a company, and she had an inheritance of today's equivalent of 20 million. Or no, sorry. She had an inheritance of $20 million. And she had zero interest in the Winchester. She had zero interest in the gun industry. Her brother-in-law, William Converse, he became the third president of the company. He was married to her sister, Mary. So Although I couldn't find any information actually on what role she played in the company, because it seems there's so much fascination over her puzzling architecture than what she did as 50% owner. It was hard for me to be able to identify what she did as a 50% owner. But what I did take away from that is that she was 50% owner and she had no interest in the business. It just became hers because that was how the will was written.
Oh my gosh.
Why would you do that?
Well, it might be also the times, I would imagine, right? I feel like the 1800s, I think that was kind of the thing to do, right? Is to will it over to your surviving spouse.
But it's still like that today.
Yeah, that's true.
Like in 1880, but it still happens today because I can't tell you the number of times that I have had a client where they inherited a business they know nothing or even care about. Now, what do I do with this company? I've gotten I've definitely gotten quite a few. I've even gotten one where the owner was facing prison for tax evasion.
Oh no.
And now who the heck was going to take over the company? Literally nobody wanted to take over the company, but no one wanted to lose their job either. So who was going to be the one? Because he kept the company so close to that no one really even knew how to run the business, but no one wanted to lose their job. So it became an absolute nightmare of a mess. What I was able to find about the Winchester Repeating Arms Company was that John Browning worked in partnership with the company. And I don't know if you're familiar with Browning, but
I'm not.
Well, Browning is responsible for a majority of the handguns that are out even today. He worked in partnership with the company and he continued to do so until he got fed up. And then that's when he started his own company.
Jeez.
Yeah. So the Winchester company never did fully recover, even though they saw sparks of success between World War I and World War II. After the death of the Winchesters, it shut down for good in 2006.
Oh man! I mean, just think about how many decades, how many centuries actually, that the company survived to just shut down.
Yeah, I mean, it took a while, and Browning was involved a lot throughout the years, which I think is the main reason why they stayed in business for as long as they did. But Sarah spent so much money building this cockamamie house, and then she also bought tons and tons of land. She spent tons and tons of money. How much of that was impactful to the business? I don't know. Like I said, I couldn't find a whole lot about it, but putting your company in the hands of someone who will love it as much as you, that was my massive takeaway out of it. Love your company as much as you do is pretty important. Don't just give it to your kids because they're your kids. Or don't just give it to your spouse because they're your spouse, or whatever it is. You got to give it to somebody who is going to continue steering that ship. With each episode, we like to share either books, tools, apps, platforms, or anything we think is a great next step and connector to our discussion. So if you like our subject matter and want to learn more, you'll have a great place to start.
So in terms of books, I'm recommending Daniel Coyle's The Culture Code, The Secret of Highly Successful Groups. So I know we've been kind of talking a lot about the technical how-tos of what to do if you're exiting your business. But honestly, the end game that we all are after is that we want our business to thrive after us and without us in the vision that we've built it to be. And the best way to do that after you've buttoned up all your legal documents, because that is still very important, is to build a great culture for your business that will carry on after you. Really much like how Jeff Bezos, handled Amazon. So this book talks about why group cultures is so powerful and how to build effective and happy groups of people. And so overall, it's a fascinating read. It's a pretty easy read. He has a great number of examples in there about just kind of how group culture works. So it might give you some ideas of how to kind of build your culture for your company. And just on a quick side note about that, I'm sure we can have a whole other episode to talk about how to build a culture of the company. But one thing to note is that culture is something for bigger companies. And honestly, culture starts from day one. It's just you, essentially. So you are the culture. And whether you hire one person, two person, three person, 10, 50, 100, if you are not intentional about building your culture, you're still going to have a culture. You just don't know what it is and what it's going to be, and it'll still kind of, grow its way through your organization. You still have a culture whether you intentionally build one or not. So knowing ahead of time what you want your culture to be and being strategic and intentional about building it is going to go a long way for your business.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people that don't understand what it means to have a culture, you can think of it as a personality. What personality do you want your company to have?
Yeah, exactly. If your business was a walking, talking person, what does it feel like? What do they look like? What do they do? How do they react to things? What is the approach? Like I said, we can do a whole entire podcast about this. It's probably super important at some point. You probably will do a podcast about it. In relation to this topic, that is the reason why your business will be able to survive without you, because part of the reason, really large reason, because of the fact that you've built such a strong culture, interweaved such a strong culture in. So of course, my final recommendation, we haven't used the word attorney enough. Get yourself an attorney. I know we talked in another episode about making a list as a business owner of what you're good at and what you're not good at. And I would say that probably next to accounting and HR, business law is probably pretty high on most people's list of what they are not good at. It's hard because, like I said earlier, lawyers are so darn expensive and they charge you hourly. So, everybody loves getting that bill where you get charged like 0.25 of an hour because you decided to call your lawyer. But I have to say, it's one of those things that, if you don't appreciate today, you will down the road if things hit the fan. And what's written and how it's written is going to cause a whole lot of difference to you and your business. So my recommendation is get a good lawyer, get one that you like, get one that has the patience to spend time with you, helping you understand all the legal language that's going into the agreements that's for your company. I know that it is a huge undertaking from a lot of personal experience to understand what is in a well-written legal agreement and all the fine nuances of every single word that's placed in there. But it is worth the time for you to understand this. Spend the time now, because you're going to end up spending a lot of time and sweat and heartache and tears and a lot of emotions, a lot of just money building up your business. So it's worth sitting down and just really investing a lot of your effort up front to protecting your business and then making sure that you can see it thrive no matter what.
Absolutely. And the separation becomes easier when you start separating yourself from your company now. I worked
it's never too early to start.
Oh, no, absolutely.
Even if you're just one person, you start with a mindset.
Yep. I started a few years ago when I was writing down, I had my processes written down, but it wasn't in a very professional manner. But when I started writing them down in a more professional manner, like putting it in Word and then putting it into PDF and then putting it into a booklet kind of thing, I started sterilizing it at the same time because I didn't want me and my voice to be in it anymore. And I didn't want me and my person to be involved as much as it was anymore, because I didn't want people to think that myself and Versatile Solutions are the same thing. We're not the same person. We're not the same thing. And it makes it a lot easier to understand the directions, meaning the processes or the procedures, when Sevana's not the name that you keep seeing in there. Well, Sevana will do this or Sevana will do that, that kind of thing.
That's right.
No, it's this person that does this. So I started sterilizing everything and generalizing things so that if something were to happen to me tomorrow, you could take my book of processes and adhere to them and apply them in the ways in which you need to. Anyone could be me.
And one thing to say to that too is you're special in the sense that the foresight to even start writing process from day one, right? Like I did not. In fact, I find the whole thing incredibly tedious, and I still find it very tedious. But
it's very tedious. That's why I've been working on it for years.
Right, and I know the importance of it, which is only why I hunker down and do it. But it is incredibly a tedious process, and I think for most everyone, when you start any kind of new process, there is going to be a certain period of time where everything's in your head, right? Because you're still trying to make it all work. So writing it down and rewriting, it just isn't kind of part of the process. I think what you want to do is kind of focus on making sure you shorten the time span in which you are risking what you're building, and you know you're risking what you're building, and what you want to do is really try to shorten that time span, get it to a place where you can document the process, and then move on from there as quickly as possible. So we're not saying that from day one you're gonna have exactly what your process is, and you can write it all down, and you're all ready to go. Like that's just not how it happens. It's the idea is the fact that you just don't want it to be sitting kind of in that risky position for too long.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So the best recommendation I can make.
Oh, what word are we going to use?
Is have a conversation with your attorney. But not just your attorney, your insurance agent, your financial advisor, and anyone else who is invested in the growth and continuity of your company. Like I said before, make sure everything is written down, including all of your passwords to everything. So we're not just writing down processes. We're writing down freaking passwords because
times have changed. So.
Yeah, you really need to write down, not just, have your computer memorize everything. Because what if something happened to you and your computer? Make sure you write down everything, the passwords to everything that you use, every tool, every platform, everything, and that it is easy to find. Make sure you have someone you trust on your bank account, not just as a beneficiary, but as a co-owner of that bank account, because when you die, this is very important for them to access the capital. Because if your company has a ton of money in the bank, and you are the only person on the account, guess what? Doesn't matter what, nobody else can get to that money. So,
well, I think like you may be able to write that if you have like a power of attorney or legal documents to show that you have the rights to it. I mean, it still takes a little bit of a jumping through hoops with the bank because they have a lot of security over this, as they should. But you can legally somehow be able to kind of transition that if you get the right paperwork in place.
Right.
Again, going back to that darn word attorney.
Attorney. Talk to your attorney. Make sure it's someone you trust. As for a book, Keep the Family Baggage Out of the Family Business, Avoiding the 7 Deadly Sins That Destroy Family Businesses by Quentin G. Fleming. It's a good book to both read and to own, as you may want to refer to it a few times. If you have a messy family, they won't suddenly become easy to work with when you die.
That's a good point.
It's not like they're all going to come together and be like, let's bury the hatchet and let's all do this together. No, they won't. They will become uglier, and it will become worse drama. Read it to prepare your company as it grows from generation to generation. And although, you're dead, who cares what happens to your company, like when you're dead, and from generation to generation. But the company does care what happens to the company itself. So if there are employees or your business donates to a certain charity, if there are other ways in which your business is invested in other people.
Or impacts other people.
Yeah. Impacts, or if it is involved in the community in some way, shape, or form, you have to secure and protect its future.
You owe it to the business.
Absolutely. Just because you're like, I died and I'm just, who cares? I'm dead. It doesn't matter. No, it does matter, especially if you have a lot of employees that are relying on this income. Well, what about them? Or what about the community that the company is already impacting or investing in? I mean, you got to consider all of those things. It's not just about you. Please join us for our next episode, How to Truly Value Your Team, Monetizing Value and Creating Experiences to Retain Employees. What a great...
Treading on the topic, culture.
Exactly. We're going to be talking about culture.
That's right. It'll be a good one.
Yes, absolutely. Want to ask a question? Leave a comment or become a sponsor for a future episode of The Business Behind Small Business? Click on the link in the show notes and fill out the form. Until next time, thanks. Bye.